Hello, students. Welcome again to the session on Matthew Arnold's poem Sohrab and Rustum. The poem begins with the scene where the two powerful armies of the Tartars and the Persians are encamped along the banks of Oxus River. During the night, the soldiers are asleep. The following day, they are about to witness a great battle. Sohrab, the hero of the Tartar army, fails to sleep. In the greyness of the early dawn, he leaves his bed and makes his solitary way through the black tents of the great encampment to the quarters of Piran Visa, commander of the Tartar army. Sohrab is the youthful champion of the Tartars. Hardly more than a boy, he had developed into the mightiest fighter of the Tartar host. Young in years and famous in arms, he is nevertheless restless and discontented. Above everything else, he wants to find his father, whom he has never seen, the incomparable Rustam, invincible chieftain of the Persians. Piranvisa awakens when Sohrab enters and asks an unusual favor of him. Sohrab wishes to challenge a leader of the Persians to single combat. He hopes that his fame as a fighter will thereby reach the ears of his father. Ranvisa urges patience and questions his wisdom in thus tempting fate. He fears that he would lose. He advises him to use the mean of non-violence to find his father. But young as he is, Sohrab is not ready to listen to him. Since he had heard that he is the son of a famous warrior, he too wants to impress his unknown father with his strength. Just as a lion's club cannot be held back, Parent Visa realized that he could hold back Sohrab and grants him the permission to fight a duel. The following morning, both the armies come out from the camp. The hosts were ready to engage themselves in the war. There is a scene where both the armies await the order of their respective commander. Just as they were about to engage in the battle, Visa appeared on the battlefront. He then announced that instead of war, there would be a duel. This meant that one champion from the Persian army and other from the Tartar army would fight with each other. This was a death match wherein the last man standing would gain victory for his entire army. Meanwhile, in the Persian camp, Guruts, one of the members of the council, goes to call Rustam to face the champion of the Tartar army. But Rustam says that the king himself should choose some young men to meet up to the challenge put by Sohrab. He admits that he is older than his opponent. Therefore, he refuses to take part in the battle. Gudurs then taunts him by asking him a rhetorical question as to what the people would say once Rustam says no to the challenge. He wants Rustam to take heed lest the people would consider his days concluded. These words of stirs the warrior's spirit within Rustam and he decides to take part in the duel. Then return to the camp while Rustam calls his followers and commands them to bring his arms and his shield to take down his opponent. He also bid his horse Ruksh to follow him. The horse follows him like a faithful dog. After this, Rustam makes his way towards the arena. Both the heroes make their way into the arena. At this point, Rustam tells Sohrab to back out. Rustam tells this because he feels pity on the youthhood of Sohrab. Rustam also points out that Sohrab is like a son to him without knowing the fact that Sohrab was his actual son. Sohrab looks at the mighty figure as he looks strange hope is born in his breast. He runs forward, kneeling before the mighty warrior, say, "Art thou not Rustam? Speak, art thou not he?" Sohrab was only told about the name of his father. Therefore, hoping to be his father, he falls on his feet, catches his legs, and asks him if he is Rustam. Rustam thinks that it is a trick and rebukes Sohrab's amazement. He tells him of his fame as a proof that he himself is Rustam He narrates to him the story besides wherein he challenged once the army of two camps besides the Oxus, all the Persian lord, to cope with him in single fight, but they shrank. He taunts him to get up to his feet and challenge him. Sohrab gets up on his feet, answers back saying that he was not scared of him. I am no gull to be made pale by words. He also warns him, saying that thought he was young, yet victory itself was not sure, in whose court it would fall in, and only even will teach us in Tour. With this conversation, the two great heroes With this conversation, the two great heroes fight for the honor of their kingdom. They fight with spear and club, and both have gained mastery over their respective weapons. In the fight, Sohrab gains the upper hand. He manages to impress damage on Rustam's armor. Rustam in turn tries to fight back by attacking Sohrab with his club, but Sohrab, being young and using his agility skills, dodges the strikes forms of Rustam. The strike hits Rustam in return and Rustam falls to the ground. Sohrab removes his sword from his sheath and pierces Rustam. He then taunts Rustam, asking him to prove his might. He reminds him that, boy as I am, I have seen battles too, have waded foremost in their bloody waves, and heard their hollow roar of dying men. He then invites him to give his best in the fight and not to hold back. As Sohrab spoke, Rustam gets up and gets hold of his spear. He is full of rage and shouts back, Girl, nibble with thy feet, not with thy hands. He tells him he will fight him with all his might, and he no longer feels pity for Sohrab because he has shamed him in front of the entire army with light skipping tricks and girls' wiles. At this point, both the warriors rush towards each other with all their strength, as two eagles on one prey and dash each other. Rustam strikes the shield of Sohrab with his spear and manages to make a hole through it but is not able to reach Sohrab's skin. Sohrab strikes Rustam's helmet with his sword. This way, there is a tough fight between the two warriors, each trying to get the better of each other. Because of the fight, a thick dust emerges from the ground and covers the battlefield, and no one could see anything. Rustam finally managed to pierce his spear through Sohrab's body. Sohrab takes a few steps behind and then falls to the ground for the last time. Finally, when the dust settles, the two armies see Rustam standing on his feet while Sohrab lying on the ground. Rustam, with a bitter smile, begins to sarcastically praise Sohrab. He tells that he was tough. He tells him he has made his father and his friends proud for having faced a tough warrior as himself. But at the end, he calls him a fool for having challenged him and getting killed by an unknown man. He insults him by saying, Dearer to the red jackal shalt thou be than to thy friend and to thy father old. Sohrab then replies back to Rustam and tells him that it was not an unknown man, but Rustam who slew him. He also tells him that if there were 10 more people as strong as Rustam against him, he would still defeat them. But it was the name of Rustam which troubled him. Because of the name he held back while fighting, he gives Rustam the shock of his life when he ironically tells that his father Rustam will avenge his death. Till now, both the warriors have no idea that they are related to each other. Rustam rebukes the statement and tells that mighty Rustam never had a son. Sohrab then reveals that Rustam did have a son, it was he himself. He also reveals that Rustam was never informed that he had a son. He also tells him that he pities his mother, who in Azerbaijan dwells with his father, grows grave with age and rules over the valiant Quds camp. He finds difficult to swallow the fact that same person who is dying in front of him was his own son. The poet then gives us a glimpse of the past. One day Rustam was an honored guest at the king's palace in a faraway city. Here he knew the king's daughter, Tamina, whom he loved for her beauty and wisdom. Now, this story we have already discussed in our earlier session. So, we just skip the slide and we see that Tamina gave birth to a boy and then she ties an amulet to know that he was Rustam's son. And Rustam was disappointed because he had hoped for a brave son, but he sent 5 jewels for the child, bade the mother to take care of her. And he was very busy in the battlefield, so could not come to see her. But when Rustam would still not believe that Sohrab was his son, he then gives the proof. He loosened his belt and removes the armor and shows the seal which is given to him by the mother. Rustam is very shattered to look at the proof. He realizes that he was his son. "O boy, thy father," he cries. He embraces Sohrab and kisses him. But this grief is too much for him to bear. He picks up the sword and the act of committing suicide, but Sohrab stops him by giving him solace. He tells him, "Come sit beside me on this sand and take my cheeks and wash them with thy tears, and say, my son." Ruksh, the same horse given by Tamina to Rustam, comes on the scene, and he, being an animal, he is able to comprehend the sad fate befallen on the master and his son. Saurabh ironically praises Ruksh for having privilege of spending some time with his father than his own son. And finally, Saurabh makes his final wish to be carried to and placed on the bed and mourned for him. He requests to put an inscription, "Saurabh the mighty Rustam's son lies here." At the end, Rustam drew out the spear from the side of Saurabh and let him pass away peacefully. Now, this was the story as well as the line to line interpretation or paraphrasing of the poem Sohrab and Rustum.